Hey there, welcome to the Impatient Entrepreneur Podcast, a show where we hear from entrepreneurs and business owners who are chomping at the bit to make their mark on the world. I'm your host, Lauren Quidar-Cockrell. Now, let's hurry up and get to the good stuff. Welcome back, friends. I am so pleased to be joined today by Emma Tessler. I've had the opportunity to get to know Emma over the past month or so, chatting about our respective podcasts, and I'm a huge admirer of her company's content and processes. So I'm very ready to dig in and hear her story today. Emma, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'll do a little podcast trade.
Yes, my favorite.
I'll be on yours soonish, and likewise. So a little mutual fan club here. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your business and podcast and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So I'm Emma Tessler. I'm the founder of 95 Media. We are a digital marketing agency. We build results-driven strategies for scaling brands. And we are really all about utilizing social media marketing in particular for monetization of, an online presence, which is what everyone is after these days. And I really kind of got into this field accidentally. I didn't think I'd end up in marketing by any means, but we can get into that a little bit later. It was, just kind of happened along the way, but I really just love being able to serve our clients in this space and utilize social media in a way where, there can be a lot of negative effects around social media, and that's talked about a lot, but there are also so many benefits to it. And we get to really tap into the beauty of the online space and help other brands grow.
Awesome. Thank you. So how long have you had your company now?
So I started it as a side hustle 8 years ago, but I've been in it, I know, a long time, but I've been in it full time for the past 3 years now.
Okay. Gotcha. And how did that start as a side hustle for you?
It actually started when I was in college. So I was in school, again, totally different path. I was in school for interior design and I was like, this is it. This is so fun and creative and all the things. And then as I was at an internship and I was the youngest person on the team, obviously, the founder was like, hey, we really want to grow this specific branch of our brand. And I heard that Instagram is the way to do this. Can you just figure this out? Just go and just work it out.
You young person, figure this out.
Yeah. I was like, absolutely. I know nothing about this, but I can totally do it.
Oh my gosh.
And that was kind of like my first even understanding of what marketing was. I just was not really exposed to the quote unquote like business side, really. I mean, I was like 19 at the time, and I was drawing at school and doing all of the fun things. And this was the first time I really understood and saw the future of where like growing a business was, because growing a brand was kind of like on my sidelines for me, because in the interior design space, most designers end up having their own small design firms. They have like one or two people that work with them. That's kind of a general path that most people go down. So, it was kind of, okay, maybe that'll happen, maybe something along those lines. But I started to look at social in a way of, not a lot of brands are doing this right now. This is really cool. I see a lot of potential. And I also am kind of wondering why other people aren't doing this.
Right.
And it was just kind of a light bulb moment, good timing, where I was able to kind of see that this was what was going to be building over the next really decade at this point. And it really was exciting to me. And so I worked with that person during my internship, and I actually still work with her today in a different capacity. Yeah, she is just like an amazing client, friend, mentor, all the things. And so as I built, I just kind of was working with her for a little while, and then graduated and took on some additional clients on the side of a full-time job. And then when COVID hit, it was kind of this catalyst moment for me where I realized, I've been thinking about going all in on 95 Media for 3 or 4 years now at this point, just pushing off that end goal of, taking the leap and doing the scary thing, which most entrepreneurs have to make that decision at some point or another. Are you really going to go all in on this? And I just felt like if I didn't go all in on it at the time when it felt like the world was just crashing and burning and no one knew what the heck was going on, I really was never going to do it. And I at that point, I just was like, okay, we're going to set specific goals that I know I want to be hitting before I leave this job. Once we started hitting them, I said, okay, well, I'm committed. We're just going to do this. Yeah. And so I quit my job at the end of 2020. And luckily, it's been going really great ever since.
Actually, a lot of people did kind of start jobs in 2020, but more out of like necessity rather than elegant design, I guess.
Yeah, very true.
And so you have a team. How many people are on your team now?
We have a team of 6 right now.
Okay. And then what is your role within the business day to day?
It's a great question.
IT support, as we were discussing before we started recording.
The IT guy, the everything guy. Yeah. No, I mean, it's changed a lot over the years, especially over the past 3 years. And today, a lot of my focus is really on the building of the brand and what are we doing to continue to build connections and build our network as a company. And my network obviously serves the company a lot. Serve our team, growth development with our team. We just did quarterly reviews yesterday to ensure like everyone's continuing to grow and hit their goals within the company and all the things. I obviously handle all of our sales. While I oversee all of the client work and my hands are on everything, our team is amazing and they do all the client deliverables. So I literally wouldn't be able to do anything I do now without them serving our clients beautifully. So, the role has changed, but most entrepreneurs, my day is filled with 35 million different tasks that none of them really go together, but they all are necessary.
And the list you made for yourself when you're drinking your morning coffee is not actually what you're working on.
Never.
It's exercise and madness. But so first official question, Emma, are you an impatient entrepreneur?
Totally. I definitely am. I mean, I think everyone has different definitions of that, but when I look at kind of I'm a very impatient person to begin with. Like most of us entrepreneurs, like we just want results and we're constantly working for results. And so for myself, the way that kind of comes through is I'll set goals and be like, okay, yeah, like in Q1, we're going to hit this goal, but like, I want to hit it now. Yeah. I want to hit it 3 months before. But I think, that goes hand in hand with having ambition and passion for what you do.
Sure.
Because, sometimes I get overly patient with things that I don't really care about. So when I'm just like, it'll happen when it happens. It's not a priority. It's not something that needs to happen along the way. I'm a lot more patient with that. But when I'm, very focused and very driven on something, impatience is definitely a driving factor.
Does your team know how to kind of manage you now, or?
I mean, I hide it well, I think. But yes, they definitely know. We were just talking about this in our quarterly reviews. One of our benchmarkers for everyone is, are you meeting deadlines? And part of our expectation as a team is, I don't want to be micromanaging. I'm controlling enough of the things I do. I don't want to have to be micromanaging everyone's day-to-day tasks. So I expect that everyone on the team is able to set their own deadlines, communicate that to me, and then meet them on their own. And part of, what we then evaluate is, of course, you need to be hitting those deadlines, but then I look for anyone who's exceeding those deadlines as well. So are you completing things a day in advance? Are you completing them a week in advance? And then looking at, how can I support them in doing that? So everyone's really great at like managing their own work, but also understanding like where my expectations lie too.
Yes. And you're all virtual, right? Around the country?
We are all virtual. Yeah. We're all women as well. So it's a very cool dynamic to be in.
Yeah. That's our current situation as well. And it's really cool. It's like when the team really starts to gel and everyone is in that right seat on the bus, it's like, oh man, we're going fast.
Yeah. I love it. I love watching the team like build their own relationships too, because it's so rewarding for me to be able to watch them. It's not just building company culture at that point, it's building friendships and relationships amongst themselves without me needing to be there or like facilitate that for them.
Yes. I was literally having that thought, I think this morning, just noodling on thinking about my team's individual relationships and how they work together and separately. And then this group works on this and this group works on this. And like, yeah, you don't need me. Y'all just go. That's great.
Feeling.
Yeah. Like you don't have to come back, to do that, like, retriever thing where you're like bringing something back to me. I'm like, no, just keep going.
I love that part.
Yeah. So how, you didn't work for another marketing agency or anything before you started yours, right? Wow.
No.
I think so. Being some of the recipient of some of the things that you create, and I mentioned the processes at the top of the call, like, have you just invented everything yourself?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I love how you do things.
What's funny is I was recording another podcast like last week, I think it was, and the girl asked me a similar question. It was, who did you work for before this? Was it ever a question if you were going to start your own agency? And it was the first time I kind of realized that I never even considered not just going on my own and starting my own thing, which is so odd because I mean, it's not odd. It just never even occurred to me like, oh, you want to be in marketing? Okay, go work for someone else. I think it was just because it was a snowball effect. So the reason that I wanted to start my own was because we had so much work coming in that like I physically couldn't do it all. And so I hired pretty early on to manage things that I couldn't do, between 9 and 5. And that would keep us going. But then when we had enough work to continue on, I don't think the question ever came up, oh, will you go work for someone else? Because I had my own clients to be serving at that point. And it was just, how do we continue to serve more clients and serve them well? And so it just kind of organically turned into this, but huge learning curve along the way. Obviously didn't plan for that because no one plans for that. But it's been a journey creating all the processes and, having friends to be resources and learning from one another and coaches in the past and, listening to podcasts has been a huge part of my own educational journey too. Really just kind of pulling from all the things to get where we are today.
Well, that's my next question is, what do you like to listen to or read, or, how do you sort of inform your worldview, your business view? Like how do you kind of come up with those ideas, other than just creating them?
Totally. In the beginning, it was, I would say, almost exclusively podcasts, which is very full circle to now be on other podcasts and have our own show. And it's very nice to be able to be like, okay, well, hopefully our show is doing the same thing, or something I say does that for someone else. I would listen to podcasts. I had like a 2-hour commute each way. So 4 hours of commuting every single day in the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah. When I first started school, because it was a whole thing. And so for 4 hours a day, I'd be listening to podcasts. I'd be taking notes on the train going into Manhattan. Like it was a literal education after I graduated college.
Wow.
And so I really learned and took a lot away from that. And it was like the OG podcasters, Jenna Kutcher, Amy Porterfield, like all of the things in the beginning. Now I kind of go in phases between listening to podcasts and listening to Audible. I really love reading, but my attention span does not let me sit down with a book in my hand. And so I have to listen to them on Audible, and I literally put them on 2x speed, and that's how my brain works. And so I read a lot on Audible, and I pretty exclusively read like business development books, personal development books, autobiographies, things like that. Just kind of learn different techniques and different strategies. And that has really helped form a lot of the ways we do things today, and just has continued to kind of tweak the processes we put into place, and make sure that we're just optimized in everything that we do.
Yeah. Have there been any particular books that have been really fundamental in your process development or service delivery or anything like that?
I don't think there's one that I could contribute, but I'm just pulling up my Audible right now because there's one that I read recently that was so good. Oh, it was it that? No, it was Come Up for Air by Nick Sonnenberg. It was a really, really great book. That was just, it felt very prevalent to the space I'm in now, as someone who has a team and has processes in place. It's not like I'm looking to start from ground zero and rebuild the whole thing. It's just, how do we make sure that what is in place is continuing to work for us? And so there were a lot of really great strategies and tips in that book. It's really all about the come up for air is coming up out of being bogged down with tasks every day as the founder, making sure that you're delegating properly and that your meeting time is used to the best of its ability and that everyone is doing things that they really own and can do really well. So I really recommend that book.
Okay. We'll put it in the show notes.
Yes.
Are you creating anything right now, like products or services or anything like that?
We aren't creating anything new right now. We typically we're not really planned in it, but every year we kind of launch a new form of service or a new service offering, just based on need that we're seeing. So earlier this year, we launched our podcast production and management services because, it was kind of a result of our own show and realizing all the things that need to go into podcasting and just kind of seeing a gap in the service industry for this space. And so we developed this service that allows us to not just do audio production and, make sure things sound great, because that's kind of the core of any podcast, but also thinking, how do you then market it in a way that helps you build your downloads and build listenership and loyalty to your show? And so we create really like a lot of marketing assets for every single episode that we produce for our clients so that they can go out and share it and make sure they're getting new eyes and traction on the show. So that's been a really exciting service addition we added this year.
Very cool. What kind of clients do y'all generally work with? Is there a particular niche or vertical or anything like that?
In the podcast space in particular, we work really with female shows, female-founded shows. It just kind of organically has happened that way, and particularly small businesses. On the social media management side, we've worked with so many different brands. We like to say we don't niche down in the industry. We really niche down in our strategy.
Gotcha.
So the way that we develop strategy is, done in a way that's really custom to each brand. But the way that we approach marketing and specifically social media marketing is what works and what we bring to the clients.
Gotcha. Yeah. Are you impatient about anything in particular right now?
So my brain is already in January.
I was just about to say, is it Q1 24?
100%. So I am like 100% already looking at like, okay, what's happening in January? Let's start planning specific things that are going on then. And I feel like the end of the year is always such an interesting time because October and November still feel kind of all in and we're really pushing, but then December 1 hits and everyone just, if you're in service, I think it kind of slows down. Product, obviously, it's, a lot of gifting and things like that. But for us on the service side, things typically kind of like slow a little bit in December, give us the time to really kind of look around and reassess. So I like to get ahead of that and start reassessing now for implementation in January. So I think I'm a little impatient about just kind of like the end of the year. Okay, let's push through it and let's get to January and really go all in again.
Everyone's like, let me live. Love it. So I know, so you've really been in business for almost a decade. In that time, has there been something that has happened to you in your business where it felt like this is the worst thing that could happen to me, but then ultimately it turned out to be the best thing?
What a great question. I think one thing that stands out to me is it wasn't the worst thing that could ever happen. I'll say it was. I don't think there's ever been one of those like catastrophic moments. How are we going to recover from this type of thing? There was a point where I was trying to delegate more of my role and kind of decided to hire someone to take over part of what I was doing at the time, be more of in operations and team management. And it didn't work in the way that I hoped it would. And I kind of ended that after a year because I think if we had continued down that route, it really would have had a lasting negative effect on the company and the team kind of culture that we've been building. And so it was really a learning lesson for me in knowing how much to pull back so that I can focus on building the business rather than being in the business, because that was the ultimate goal. But I didn't have a clear enough vision to execute that properly in a way where it served me and the brand well enough. So I don't think it was necessarily a bad person in the role. It was just, it wasn't what it needed to be to fill the gap that I identified. And it really just didn't work well. And there were a lot of negative side effects from doing that, which were starting to come out towards the end. And I was like, what changed here? And I realized that was like the big change. And so once we kind of eliminated that, everything really, the dust settled and everything went back to where it was. And the team had more ownership over their things. And it has really worked well since, like eliminating that. But it was definitely a big learning lesson, because everyone was like, okay, well, your role is growing and you can't continue to do the things that you're doing. So you need to hire someone to be like your second you. And that was the goal, but it just didn't work out the right way. And that's fine. And, I think that was just one really difficult time of business to really realize, okay, like I take ownership of that. That wasn't the right move to do. This wasn't the right person for the role in the way that I wanted it to go. And so it was a learning journey for sure.
Yeah. Well, the road is full of those.
Of course.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I won't do that again. I might do something similar, but
different
not that
way.
exactly.
Yeah. Totally.
But yeah, I mean, I've certainly been there too, where I have this vision of what I want to change, and you kind of throw people and money at it, and you're like, well, we'll figure it out. And then it doesn't exactly work out that way. And you got to pull back in the oars and lick your wounds and all that good stuff. But
I like to call them expensive lessons.
Yes. Yes.
I've had a lot of those.
Yeah. We, I've shared on another episode too, but I'll share it here again that, I'm a story brand certified guide. And in our community, we call it something like, paying tuition to, I'm never going to do that again, university.
I love that.
We all do it. And that's one of the reasons, someone actually asked me this week, what do you want out of the show? Why do you have it? And I told him, I want people to feel like they're not alone, that we're all making mistakes, but hopefully we're recovering from them and we're learning from them, and we're learning the lessons and making ourselves stronger. And, we're all doing it. It's okay.
Totally. And if you don't try, you never know. And
Right.
for me, like in that hire too, I think I would have regretted if I didn't do it, because I was just drowning at the time. I was like, I can't do everything. And so it did free me up to focus on other elements. And then when I took that roll back, it was a lot lighter in different ways. And, it all works out the way it should,
Right.
and the way it's meant to. And then you just learn along the way and don't make the same mistake twice. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. There was a role that I was desperate to hire for over a year. It might have even been 2 years. I just thought, this is a key hire that is going to catapult my business. And I tried hiring, ended up with, a good contractor for a while. Then I was like, no, now's the time. I'm going to do this. And I hire this person. It's going to be a full-time thing. And, it did not go well.
To say the least.
Yes. And we were all a little shaken up by it, but I definitely sat down at the end of that and I wrote down every lesson that I learned. And I was just like, I'm never going to hire in a hurry again, because I was leaving the country for a while and I want to make sure that person was in place. I'm never going to hire under the gun again. I'm never going to do this again. Just kind of went through this list of, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And we all had that pit in our stomach, like, well, I think it's okay. I think I did all right. No,
totally.
Yep.
Everyone knows early on.
We know. And you know what? It's fine now.
There you go.
So when you were growing up, was there something about you that people said, oh, Emma, you're too you're too sensitive, or you're too competitive, or whatever it is, and really made you feel that piece of you was a weakness, but now running your own company and living your life, you realize it's actually your superpower?
Yes, for sure.
I love watching people's faces when I ask that question.
Did you see like 8 million stories go through my head? One that comes to mind is for a long time of, like I would say high school through college, I was consistently told that I was intimidating. And I didn't really know what to do with that because I was just being myself. And I didn't know what to do with it. And I didn't necessarily look at it as this negative, although I knew people meant it as a negative. Right. I was just, like, okay, well, sorry. I don't know what to tell you. Just like man up. I don't know what else you should be doing. But then there was this quote, which I'm sure everyone has heard it by now, is that, there's no such thing as being intimidating, only being intimidated. And so that mindset shift really kind of changed my perspective of being told that. And then as I began building the business, which started while I was in college, I realized that it's not that I am intimidating. It's just that I know what I want. And if I didn't have that, I would not be here today at all. And that element of who I am, which again, I don't think intimidating is the right word. I think just like driven and direct is probably the right word. Led me to sign our first couple of clients just by going up to them at events and being like, hey, I see what you're doing. I know I can help. Do you want to work together? That was how we first, signed our first handful of clients. And, I think that quality actually led to a lot of the success that we've had as a brand and that I've contributed to the brand. So yeah, I think that's probably one of them. The other one that comes to mind too is I one time had someone who was a friend at the time and is no longer a friend, tell me that I had too much masculine energy. Interesting. And that if I were just more feminine, I would be so much better. And there's, a lot of different perspectives on those two words, obviously. And at the time, I knew that was, of course, meant to be insulting. However, I also immediately knew, because that came a lot later, was that masculine energy is very, in my opinion, needed in business and kind of the drive behind a lot of like get done type of thing in business. And that there's always a balance and there's a time for, that more soft energy to come out and when to tap into that versus to be more in your masculine. But I think those two are really interesting perspectives because I've always found that when someone's trying to be like insulting in a way or telling you that you're too much of something, it really sometimes is an insecurity of their own. For sure. And it can oftentimes be a strength that you have rather than something that you should try and get rid of.
Yeah, I would say both of those examples are people feeling small and wanting to make you smaller so that they can feel bigger, for sure. I've had my fair share of intimidating, not compliments. Yep. And I think, I'm much older now, and I think a lot of it is just holding yourself with poise, having integrity, at least having the outward appearance of having your stuff together.
Outwardly.
Yeah, if you're like, oh, you're so organized. I'm like, please don't look behind me in the Zoom camera. Well, anyway, I can see how those certainly are strengths for you. So
thank you.
Yeah, the haters can suck it.
They can stay over there. It's
That's
fine.
right. They can live their small lives.
Yes.
So do you have a piece of advice for our listeners today that they can do right now to make their lives stronger or better?
Yeah. I mean, I think that my biggest piece of advice would be to go for like what you're feeling a passion for. If it's, doing something on the side and building something, or if it's not business related at all and it's just what you're excited about. I don't think enough of us take time to really sit back and say, what's exciting me right now? What am I feeling lit up about? And that's something that I've been going back to myself recently and really asking, what am I what still lights me up here? Am I still so excited to wake up in the morning and get to work? Because I used to be the person who literally could not work enough. I was working just like disgusting hours. And, that's kind of slowed down a little. And so taking that time to sit back and say, okay, in my professional life, what's really lighting me up and what am I still really absolutely obsessed with? And then also in my personal life, what makes me excited? What do I look forward to at the end of the day or on the weekend or plan vacations for? Because going back to being impatient and just entrepreneurs as a whole, we get really caught up in what is the goal and consistently looking on the horizon for what's coming next rather than sitting in what's currently happening and celebrating wins and, acknowledging the hard work that's gone into something. So really taking a moment to sit back and say, what's been going great? What am I still excited about? And maybe focusing a little bit more on that moving forward rather than just like this next mountain to climb.
That's really good advice because you're right. We definitely do live for tomorrow a lot of times with that impatience. And I think being present with anything, whether, art or your family or exercise or whatever it is, just kind of being in that moment is so important and not burning out. Because I feel like you can really burn yourself out living for the future too.
Absolutely.
Do you still design interiors?
No, I do not. I don't at all. I think maybe one day I might end up back in that space, but right now I am happy to be in the marketing world.
All in the digital world.
Yes. We actually work with so many designers still and like home products and things like that. So I'm very much still in the world, but just not the one doing the designs themselves.
Gotcha. You get to scratch the itch.
Yes, exactly.
Surround yourself with beautiful things.
Totally.
Well, Emma, this has been so fun. I feel like I could go on and on and on. But thank you for coming on the show with me.
Thank you. This is such a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Will you tell listeners where they can find you and connect and maybe do business with you?
Absolutely. So our website is 95media.co. On Instagram, I am most active. It is 90.5.media, all spelled out, the words. And then we have our own podcast as well called Stop Scrolling, Start Scaling. And Lauren is going to be a guest on there very soon. So that'll be great. And on our website are all the ways to work with us. So if you're interested, you can always reach out there.
I will give a plug for your podcast. It is very good. I shared the AI one with my team the other day. I was like, this is really good stuff, guys.
Yay! I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Impatient Entrepreneur. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague or give us a 5-star review on Apple. You can also chat with us on Instagram or Facebook at The Impatient Entrepreneur Pod. Want to star on a future episode? Head over to theimpatienttrepreneurpod.com to inquire. Thank you to the team at Quidar & Co. for believing in me and bringing this podcast to life. And thank you to Carson Childers for mixing and editing this episode. Can't wait to see you next time.